Welcome to a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Pace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest.
My brother
Frankie, how you doing, pal?
How you doing, pal? How you doing?
I'm doing anybody. I'm doing everybody.
How you doing? That's maybe a good phrase for our show today, because we got Broadway Empresario Joey Corcoran, who produced Tony and Tina's wedding on Broadway. Be our guest today.
Whatever that is.
I think
I'm just kidding.
30 years. Imagine I'm getting a 30-year run.
35 years. It's played all over the world. Played in 150 cities, countries all over the world. He was going to be a great guest.
Yeah, interesting. South Bronx guy, too. I got to ask him about where in the South Bronx he grew up.
Well, yeah. Ask him. Don't ask me.
I'm going to find out. I want to find out what was the impetus for this masterpiece, Tony and Tina. Where did you come up with it?
Good.
Yeah.
So,
how many giddy weddings have you been to?
Good question. Great question.
Not as many as you would think, because once my family stopped getting married. But how many Italian weddings have I been to? Maybe half a dozen or so. But why don't you go through the menu on an Italian wedding? What is an Italian wedding like?
Well, you're going to have the soup first, right? Soup, salad, pasta, then the entree, then desserts, then it just goes on.
It goes on and on and on. The first one I went to, we grew up with limited means. So, when the antipasto line, I thought was the main course.
Yeah.
Because they have all the meatballs,
and the
pastas and everything.
The gabagool, the pepperoni.
But also pastas. It's the clams and everything. It was all on the antipasta table.
I love it. My first wife was Italian, right? Antonucci. And of course, she wanted me to meet the family, and I'd come out of the pub. It'd take until about 5:30 blasted. And then I'd come over to meet her family. But I was always astonished the amount of food. Like, you'd sit down, and when you're Irish or when you're an American, you don't realize that the salad goes last. Yeah. It's really weird. At first it's the pasta. They come out with the antipasta.
Well, every place in the world.
That is the pasta. That is the meat.
Every place in the world outside of America, the salad's last. Because it helps you digest your food.
Which is great. Yeah, it's cool. But like you, I'm saying, all right, well, I filled up on the pasta, and all of a sudden now they come out with a turkey. And it's like
a turkey
or a leg of lamb or whatever.
Who cut the turkey?
So, but they come out with that. Then you say, okay, well, I did a good job on that. I'm done. And then they come out with something else, and then the salad at the end.
Yep.
But the food is 7 courses.
I had never been to a wasp's home for dinner before, and when I was working in San Diego advertising agency, my boss was a big wasp. So I sat down for dinner, and they had a chicken salad there. Then I was waiting for the rest of the food, and that was the meal, a fucking chicken salad.
Did they put Wonder Bread out? Did they give them the Wonder Bread, the white bread? I remember when I first time I was I guess 19. I was in Europe, and I was starving because I was drunk the night before. Of course, now I want something to sop up the grease. I wake up and continental breakfast. Oh, yeah, I've been on a continental breakfast. They brought out the rolls and the coffee, and I'm waiting. I'm saving the rolls for the breakfast. After about a half an hour, I don't think there's anything coming out, but this is the continental breakfast. Oh, little do we know, it's sheltered life in the Bronx,
Well, I'm sure Joe's got some stories to tell, so why don't we get him on the phone right now?
Yeah, let's find out what this Joe Corcoran character is all about.
He is a character.
He looks like a character.
I'll tell you that. He is a character. Hey, Joe.
How are you, Joe? Good to see you, brother.
Good. How are you? How are you guys?
Good. That's Billy O'Connor, and that's Derek Harris.
Hello.
Gentlemen, nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you, Joe.
Yeah. And Billy, as you got started saying before, I'm connected with all of these Irish writers and people at the Irish Art Center and John McDonough at BAI. I was just over in Ireland for 3 weeks. They brought Malachi McCourt's ashes over there, and they did like a whole show about it.
Where was Malachi from? Limerick or Tipperary? Where was he from?
I don't know, honestly. Yeah. I don't know. I knew him in New York.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knew Malachi. Malachi was a character. God bless him. What a funny guy, man. He was a funny guy.
And then John's got a great background as a cab driver and doing a one-man show and all that stuff. They're interesting people.
Oh, yeah. Johnson was On the Meter is the name of his one-man show, right? On the Meter, yeah. And you're from the South Bronx yourself, Joe, right?
I am. Cypress Avenue, St. Luke's Parish.
St. Luke's, the poorest parish in the Bronx. St. Luke's.
Is that right?
Well, I remember we used to play basketball there, and I went to St. Philip Neri. That was our parish, right? So we played basketball against St. Luke's, and we go down there, and you'd be dribbling down. There was a big hole in the middle of the court that they never fixed. You had to avoid the hole when you were playing. This is way back when. But St. Luke's is long since closed, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I left there probably when I was, I'm 64 now, probably 5 or 6 years old. Yeah. Left there and moved to Long Island.
Do you also know Jack McGee? Do you know Jack from the South Bronx? Jack McGee's from the South Bronx, too.
I don't know that name, unfortunately.
But you're wrapped up with the Irish Mafia, huh?
Oh, very much so, yeah. And all my family's in the fire department, Jim Slevins, and I saw that you were a 9/11. You were a fireman during 9/11.
I knew two Joe Corcorans. I knew two Joe Corcorans on the job, and one of them was the lead piper. He was the guy who did the pipe.
That's my relative.
That's your relative, Joe Corcoran?
That's my dad's cousin.
Wow. Here's a guy who led the parade every year. Big guy. Right. Joe was about, 6'5", 6'6", big guy.
Oh, yeah, big.
Big headdress. Of course, he'd come up Fifth Avenue with leading the Piper Band, and he died. He had a heart attack leading the parade. That's how he died.
That's the same guy. Exactly right.
I'll tell you a story about Joe.
This is incredible.
Here's a weird story about Joe Corcoran. And then I was working with another Joe Corcoran. I didn't know Joe, the Piper, the head of the Piper, but there was a Joe Corcoran in my house, 17 truck. So I'm drunk one night. I'm in Bayside, and I pick up this gal. I'm in a car with her, and I'm just about to do the deed, and she tells me, "Your name's Corcoran." She goes, "Yeah, my father's on the fire department." I said, "No." I said, "What's your father's name?" She said, "Joe Corcoran." I said, "Oh shit, Joe's your father?" So I go to take my hand out of her pants. I says, is he 17 trucks? She goes, "No, he leads the parade." I said, "I don't know him." I don't know that Joe Corcoran. So that was, wow, that's fantastic, man. Your cousin, that's wild. It's a small world, brother.
Yeah, we had a family reunion, and there was like 7 of us that were Joe Corcorans. And so we had fun with the youngest one. Because we're all saying, "I'm Joe Corcoran, I'm Joe Corcoran, I'm Joe Corcoran." And the 5-year-old really couldn't grasp that. We all had the same names. But, he was a fun guy. We had several family reunions together in one place. So, and I know a lot of the firemen, too. Ray Downey and...
Oh, I know Ray Downey. Ray Downey, I know. Oh, man. So you guys are both producers. Frank, you said you went up to the Berkshires because of something wilder, right? Because of what? Is that just to get the idea of the background of the show itself? What would a producer going up and why do you have to do that?
Well, in this case, we went up there because that's where the story was set. The story was set in the Berkshires because it was based on Lee Kalsheim's life. Something Wilder was based on Lee Kalsheim's wife. Lee Kalsheim is a very noted playwright. They produced a lot of plays in the Berkshires where Joey currently is sitting now. And that's why we produced.
So you're getting a feel for the place? Is that it?
Yeah. Well, we had to shoot some stock photos. We had to shoot stock footage. But let's go back to your Tony and Tina's question. Joe, why don't you tell us about how you got involved in Tony and Tina's wedding, how you came to produce it, and how you segued from that experience into producing a number of the other things that you produced.
Right out of college, I had friends that worked on Wall Street, So I got a job right away working down on Wall Street. And, a lot of my actor friends that I graduated from Hofstra with, all moved to New York and they were doing acting and stand up and all that stuff. And my good friend Mark Nasser, who ended up creating the role of the groom, had started been working on this interactive wedding where the audience goes as plays the invited guests of this, bridal party. And so they needed people to do it. I mean, nobody was getting paid back then, but they needed people to do it. And my friend Mark said, you've been in lots of weddings before, you know exactly what to do as a bride's groom. And he asked me to play one of the roles. And so I used to come with my suit on to the rehearsals, and it was, quite an eye opener, me being around actors, like that, in rehearsal and stuff like that. And it was, when we did the show, I wasn't really into it, the acting kind of a thing. I was kind of just interested in the audience's reaction, and I realized it was a party, and that was pretty much right up my alley as far as my experience, because I had been doing entrepreneurial booze cruises in Fire Island, and then we did them in New York City at the Circle Line. So eventually I left in 1988 or so. We started in 1985, starting doing showcases of it. And then I went to the writers and said, I want to do this thing professionally. And we were able to do a contract, and I was 28 years old when that happened, and we opened in Greenwich Village, and it just took off from there. It was really, the media loved it. They didn't know how to review it. They didn't know if they had nothing to compare it against, but it just was like a big book report, basically saying how much fun everybody was having. So it really gained a lot of momentum, and we ended up running 25 years in New York, and then we brought it back for the 30th anniversary production in Times Square, and we've run all the major cities. We did a big production in Los Angeles, and Frank was at the opening, which was great. We had a great press agent who filled the whole room up with a lot of celebrities, and that was kind of a lot of fun, to be a part of that. But we did lots and lots of cities of it, and so each one of these were its own entrepreneurial venture where we had to raise money and all that stuff. So I was involved in all of them, and usually got local partners to do them. In San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Las Vegas, New York.
Wow.
We did tours. I mean, it's still going. It's not running regularly every day. But like right now, there are 3 shows running now, 2 in Florida, 1 6 shows, another's 3, and 1 up in Minnesota in a casino. So it's still out there.
Yeah, well, Tony and Tina's wedding is unique because each show is different.
Right.
Because the show depends on
the audience.
The show depends on who comes to the show that night. So the actors have no idea. I mean, they have various bits they do during the wedding, during the reception, during everything, but they have to be improvisational actors. So I was wondering how that show translates in Japan, because you've done the show in Japan, Germany, United Kingdom. How do you find it translates?
They did. They had a translator for the ceremony part, but first of all, it was all women. Shockingly, it was all women, and it was like the high-end women. The guy who we partnered with there was bringing people over here to the States. Matter of fact, to Tanglewood to see classical music and stuff. So these were mostly educated women that all spoke English. Yeah. So there really wasn't not so much of a language barrier, but they did have a translator there to help with those people that didn't speak English.
Well, I mean, culturally, how did it translate?
I thought that they just loved the fact that it was a party. Yeah. They loved the music and the dancing and how wild it was. I mean, I don't think they just had seen anything like it before. And we did it at the 4 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I think they knew who the audience was they were going after, and so they filled up every night with their people of basically higher educated people. 95% of the audience was women.
Yeah, funny.
We were there to have a good time.
Funny you say higher educated because Tony and Tina were anything but higher. Let me ask you. We were talking prior to you coming on about an Italian wedding. What did you serve? What was the reception like? It was like a 5-course meal, 6-course meal. What?
We include food costs into our ticket price, but so we did it. We kept it cheap. Like at the beginning, it was such a surprise that people couldn't actually believe that they actually ate at the show. But we did baked ziti, a tossed salad, like a meatball or a chicken, and and bread, and then and then the cheapest champagne that we could find. So it was. It wasn't about the food, What we found out later, playing in different markets around the country, that audiences cared more about the food. So we had to upgrade it a little bit. But at the beginning, I think most people were just surprised that they had food involved, and we did it as a buffet.
Was it the first interactive? Was it the very first time somebody had tried this interactive idea? So people were shocked.
As far as I know that the interactive thing goes back, Shakespeare and all that stuff. But I think this is the first commercial interactive show that existed, and then of course, every show is kind of interactive now. They try to break down the fourth wall, and they want to interact with the audience more and try to engage them. So I'd like to think it's the first one. There certainly wasn't anything like it. At the time, there was a show called Tamara, which Frank, I'm sure you remember.
Sure.
It ran in New York and in Hollywood.
I think that followed you, did it?
Yeah, it did, but it was a little bit different. The audience was kind of like a fly on the wall, as opposed to ours, where our characters directly interacted with the audience. They treated them like friends and family.
Yeah. So you went on to produce Finnegan's Rainbow and
Finnegan's Farewell.
And Finnegan's
Farewell. That's a
Dr. Zhivago and a few other things.
Famous Finnegan's Wake is a famous Irish folk song. And a matter of fact, from my research, I know you're part of the Irish community because you had the real deal there. You had the music by the Dubliners. You weren't playing games when you did Finnegan's Farewell. That's authentic shit. Luke Kelly and Donnie Drew. I'm sorry?
We still do that show.
Finnegan's Farewell?
We do that show too.
And it's based, of course, on Finnegan's Wake, right?
Yeah, the story is that a guy, he's a postman and he wins $1 million in the slots at Atlantic City, and he fakes his death, and so they're all there for his memorial, and they find out that he's actually alive. So it's fun.
I actually went out with an Irish fiddle player, for a couple of years, and she was a really great fiddle player. She used to play all over McLean Avenue, you're up in Yonkers and everything. She was
yeah.
And man, I had a couple of joints of my own. I had a couple of saloons, and I'd have her play. Just come in, join in with the band because I'd get her for nothing because she was my girlfriend. I'd have a 10-bar. And I'd say go up and play with the band. But Patty's Day, they get 4 times. An Irish band gets 4 times as much as they get during the year for Patty's Day.
That's right. That's why we try to discourage people not to do that weekend.
So, besides that, you've done, Jesus Christ Superstar, Dr. Zhivago. What the hell are you doing with a Russian drama? Dr. Zhivago, you made a musical of it or what?
Well, I was one of many people. Those Broadway shows are just, there was like 20 producers on that thing. But we initially started it in La Jolla, with the idea to bring it directly to Broadway, but there wasn't a theater available. We tried to get into London. There wasn't theaters available. The timing wasn't right, and the talent wasn't lining up. And so eventually we ended up in Australia and did Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. and then went to Korea, and then eventually went to Broadway from there. But
Wow.
I fell in love with the score. I did Lucy Simon did the score of it, and I just thought it was fantastic. But I think it was just much too top heavy in retrospect. As far as it was more like a Les Mis style, with a lot of sets and a lot of movement and lots of people. And I think that it was right on the cusp of being too much, to sustain.
Too busy.
So-
Too busy on the stage. Just too much stuff going on. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, too much wars and stuff like that. People, guns, and I just think that it was a beautiful story that didn't need all the bells and whistles that it had.
Because
In retrospect.
all those bells and whistles cost money.
Exactly right.
All
Frank.
all those things set in the past cost wardrobe. That's
right.
all
That's
those
right.
all those wars and battles cost money.
Yeah, the producers at work here, Derek.
Yeah,
This is it. The
yes.
money, bro. The money guys. These are the guys.
So,
Yeah.
speaking of money, Joe, why don't you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit of how we met?
Well, I had a dear friend, Marty Nedboy, and Frank was like an angel to Marty. He got him jobs on all the shows that he did. And so, whenever I used to come to California and visit Marty, I used to stay with him. And he was just like such a unique character. And I know that Frank had put him in a lot of the show and put him a lot in, put him to a scene here and a scene there. And he was such a funny guy. But I noticed, I watched his reel recently, and he's just, he got very, very nervous when the camera was on him. And
Hamana.
Oh, he did it too.
yes, Frank, I remember you telling me about when he was doing the High School Musical. That scene that you had to shoot it like 7 times before Marty got it right.
Yeah.
And only had a couple of lines.
Yeah, and I finally had we were shooting at 4 cameras, and I finally had to tell the director, put one camera on Marty, but don't let him see it. And I told Marty, okay, we got your stuff now. Oh no, I said put 4 cameras on Marty, and don't even say anything. And I said to Marty, we got your stuff. We're doing this to get other actors coverage. So then he did it right when he thought there was no cameras on him. But if he really looked at the cameras, they were all putting him on. But I got to tell you one quick anecdote to that. In 1988 or so, Marty comes up to me and he says, "I got this friend Joe Corcoran. He needs. He's putting together some people. He's putting together some money. So I want you to invest with Joey Corcoran." I said to myself, I'm going to invest in a guy from a guy who doesn't have 2 pots to piss in. I'm going to go on his
recommendation.
Uh,
on his recommendation. I think not. That was probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made.
Wow.
Because I can't imagine how much money you've made on the worldwide rights to Tony and Tina's wedding, the merchandising and everything. I missed the boat on that because didn't have the foresight. But I wasn't really making that much money myself in 1988.
I'm sure they weren't going to ask for that much, Frank.
Yeah, well,
That's like taking stock tips from me. You want?
well, look at how much is your Bitcoin worth?
No, ADA. You mean the Cardano?
Yeah,
Cardano.
Is it Bitcoin?
No, it's not Bitcoin. It's Cardano. But
Oh.
it's still
well,
went
it's
down,
still
went
up.
up. It's fucking around.
Yeah.
It's still around. But tell me, Marty, you knew Marty from the Bronx back in the day?
How did you?
Well, I met Marty in New York. I met Marty in New York through mutual friends, and then started going out to Los Angeles to visit him. But he was at the very, very, very beginning of the first time we started doing it in 1985. Marty was there, so he was. He's been around since the very beginning, and he stuck to me like glue. He stayed with me all the time. I picked up every check that I've ever been with Marty, but I still loved him. He was one of the funniest people I ever met, and I miss him dearly.
Yeah, when he passed away, George Lopez wrote a column for the LA Times about his friend Marty. And he said, George said Marty was the funniest man he ever met.
Wow. That's high praise from that.
And I met Marty because Marty was very good friends with Howard Storm. And I was very good friends with Jay Thomas, who was co-starring in Mork and Mindy. Marty was Jay and Robin Williams's dialogue coach.
Right.
And then I met Howard Storm. I met Marty through Howard Storm, and one thing led to another. Then when I got head of the class, I was in a position to be able to hire Marty. And then he worked as a phone page. One of the funny stories, I got to remember the payoff before I start telling the story, was he was answering the phone at head of the class when Mike Tyson was going through his
thing with
Robin Givens. So Mike would come to the set, and I can't remember the payoff. I can't, and it would it would be, he answered the phone. He goes, head of the class, may I help you? And the voice on the other line who said, Miss Tyson, please. And he said, I'm sorry, Miss Tyson's not available. You don't understand. Miss Tyson. This is Miss Tyson calling. And his buddy said, you don't understand. I'm telling you, Miss Tyson's not available. He says, no, you don't understand. This is Miss Tyson. He said, you don't understand, it was Cicely Tyson calling for Robin. And Marty wouldn't let her on the phone. Click. He finally
It's
went
like
click.
something out of a Cheech and Chong bit. No, it's me, man. It's me. Open the door, the cops. You know?
Yeah.
So I got to back you up 1 second. Did you say that Marty was the dialogue coach?
Yes. He became the dialogue coach because he would run lines with the actors.
Okay.
He was probably he was the only guy that Sybil Shepherd hated. Sybil Shepherd was the only person that hated Marty, and he hated her. He was working as a dialogue coach on Moonlighting, and he was dialogue coach for Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. He said, "That miserable cunt."
But how does he with his dialogue? How that could be a dialogue coach?
No, not a dialect coach.
Oh,
not a dialect coach.
Dialogue
coach.
Oh, okay.
He would run lines with the actors.
I see.
Joe,
Okay.
do you remember the time when, did he ever tell you the story when Marty was the dialogue coach for Jonathan Winters on Mork and Mindy?
No. I heard Mork and Mindy stories, though. They couldn't get Robin out of the dressing room.
Yeah. Well,
tell me that story.
Well,
Nose candy?
I'll tell you the story because I remember the payoff on this. He said one day, Jonathan Winters calls him into his dressing room. And he said, "What's going on, Johnny?" And he said, well, he started telling him some really sad story. And it was how his life was in shambles, and how he wasn't getting the acting roles he wanted, and how Marty said this was such a sad story. He was in tears. He said, "I can't believe this great superstar, Jonathan Winters, is pouring his heart out to me." And just then somebody came knocking at the door, and Marty said, I'll be right back. Hold that thought. And he went out to answer the phone or something. When he came back, there was a guy, Marty was telling, Jonathan Winters was telling the same story to an Iggy. And that's what he would call it. That's what he was. He said, "I was so pissed off that there was this guy, aye, sir, aye, sir," that he was telling the same story to that's me, this Iggy. So, so go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean,
he was classic.
I got to tell you, one of the, I had no idea, of course, so you were connected with it, but one of the big talked about off-Broadway shows was that 5-year catechism, the late night catechism. Everybody was talking about that thing for a while. The nun with the foul mouth, the foul-mounted nun. Wasn't that it? She was foul-mounted?
Yeah, well, she just went in and just talked about back in the day when she used to be able to hit people, and now you get in trouble for it. But she had audience members putting if they were chewing gum, she made it put it on their nose, stand in the corner, and these audience members actually did it. Mary Pat Donovan, she's the writer of that original writer, and she's a genius. She's done probably 6 sequels to it. Unfortunately, I didn't continue the show beyond New York. I did it in New York and Philadelphia, but then another producer came in and got the rights to do it everywhere else, and he's done very, very well because it's a one-person show. I made it into a one-person show from a 2-person because they had a priest in it that had like 5 lines, and when we went to New York and we had to go through Actors Equity, we just said, "This is absurd. We don't have." Now we got to get an understudy for this guy, and so we ended up cutting the role.
What'd you say her name was? Mary Pat Donovan? Is that who?
Mary Pat Donovan.
Did
nice
she write
Irish.
and perform it too? Was she the nun? Because the nun was on point, man. She had the stern
She's amazing.
face.
Yeah, and my mother's age and all that stuff. All these generations of people that went to Catholic school can absolutely relate. You know what I mean? And she was right on. She was spot on.
She reminded me of 2 nuns I had in Catholic school when I was a kid. 2 stern bitches.
Yeah, when I used to hit kids, they said.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I had a nun. This is true as God. I was in the 3rd grade, and I had a nun. Of course, I was always cutting up. I was always screwing up. So
You?
Yeah. So they used to give me shots. When you hold your hand out, she had a ruler. She had a long yardstick, and she'd whack you on the tips. This bitch, if it was cold out, she made you put your hand out in the snow.
Oh.
You're talking about you're in 3rd, 4th grade. Put your hand out in the snow, and then she'd get you on the tips. I mean, she was. They relished it. And this woman did it on off Broadway. This what was the name of the Late Night Catechism? Everybody in the Bronx was talking about that show. Because it brought back
she broke it down to like Catholics and publics. And, the kids who went to public school were the kids that their parents really didn't care about them.
Yeah. That's really great. We always thought that. A guy going to Clinton was like, I guess they gave up on him. He's going to Clinton.
That's right.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, a lot of laughs in that. A lot of laughs.
Joe, going back to Tony and Tina, you had a number of celebrities act as principals, didn't you?
We brought in like Lee Mazzilli, the baseball player.
Yeah, what kind of actor was Lee?
Yeah.
Was he as good as Marty?
Well, I would say like quasi-celebrities, I guess,
Yeah.
They weren't A-listers, but we had Lee Mazzilli, the baseball player, he played for the Mets and coaching the Yankees, and he's a Brooklyn boy. And we had Stuttering John from the Howard Stern show. He was on there, and they was talking about it on Stern. They talked about it every single day because I asked John how to go with the show last night, and
that was
so Howard was at the show, and I mean it was about 18 months at least that they mentioned it almost every day on Howard Stern, and I was listening every day for it, and it was really great.
Great for the box receipts, right? Great for the receipts for mentioning on Howard Stern, and that's great.
Yeah, there was always somebody. A funny story about how Stuttering John, when I first met him, we had dinner together, and he was stuttering like crazy. And I just kept thinking to myself, I'm going to put him in as the best man. The best man does a little toast, and it's going to be absolutely hysterical if he's going to be stuttering all through it. But apparently when he gets comfortable, he doesn't stutter anymore. And so his manager came back to me after the initial 6-month period, said that he wanted to stay on and that he wanted to have more money. And we had become somewhat friends. And I said, the thing is that I hired Stuttering John, and all I got now is John. He doesn't stutter. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point of having him. But we had also Ken Kramer, the real Kramer.
Real Kramer, yeah.
That Larry David based the role of Kramer on who lived right across the street from, well, the hall from him in Manhattan Plaza. Kenny was running for mayor at the time, believe it or not, self-promoter. And we were friends, and he wanted to be in the show because he was running for mayor. And I said, sure, Kenny, we'll put you in there. You just play yourself. So he actually wore the Seinfeld puffy shirt, and that was his costume. And he just went around telling everybody he was friends with Tony and Tina and whatnot. And that was really great. Larry David came. I remember watching him. He was looking around like, what the hell is going on here? This is a real show. You know, and then 7 or 8 years later, I guess, after, you know, when Larry did his own show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, they did a whole episode about Tony and Tina, about him. His wife has a friend going into the show in Los Angeles, and Larry didn't want to go to it, and she dragged him there, and they had a whole big scene in the bathroom, and it was really fun. I mean, it's nice to see that it's gotten around in different places, and it's almost part of the culture.
Yeah,
you know?
It is a part of the culture.
Did you recognize right away that this was something unique, something that was going to, I mean...
No doubt, because it was a party, and and my family really didn't take us to the theater. They didn't really have the money, and we basically, maybe we did the Christmas show every other year or something like that, but they were not cultural people and didn't take us to the theater. But when I started inviting my friends and their friends, it's like the ball crowd, you know what I mean, to come to see the show. I realized this is a much bigger audience than people who go to see Shakespeare and to see plays and to musicals. This is, anybody who likes the party is going to like to be here for this. So I knew that the market was big.
Did you have music?
We did at the time. We did for the first bunch of years. We did. But then when we started doing other cities and started moving it around, we eventually moved into a DJ.
Oh, sure. But in New York, you had live musicians for the first few years? Or
yes, yeah. At least the first 15 years. We had a musicians union. The musicians were all in the union.
Right.
So we had to deal with 802. So not until the New York first version of the New York show ended did we stop. We had live musicians in Los Angeles. In most of the big cities, the first run, we had live musicians.
Right.
Now,
and then we found ways to cut that.
Joe, did you say, or did I misinterpret that? You said when Tony and Tina's Wedding was written, that there was a stand-up comic involved with the writing?
Well, there was, there was 13 people are actually credited with writing it because they created their own characters. I mean, technically, I created my character, but I didn't press for that and whatnot because I was being on the producer. But Phil Rosenthal, who created Everybody Loves Raymond, was the original priest in Tony and Tina's Wedding, and so he went on to do really great things, as you know, and had that long running series.
Well, you know what? When I first started doing comedy, people that knew in the business would try to tell me, you're not doing stand-up comedy. It's interactive. You want to get the audience involved. That's why crowd work is so important.
So like you suck, Billy?
I sucked, yeah.
No. So you wanted an audience, you wanted to be heckled. You suck, O'Connor.
You suck, O'Connor. Yeah. My ass sucks. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, that's the idea of the interactive audience is brilliant. I mean, it makes so much sense.
So let me go back. Phil is one of the credited writers on Tony and Tina's Wedding?
He's not, believe it or not, he's not credited. But he did create the role. And basically, Frank, to be quite honest, I think he got fired by the original people because he was getting too many laughs.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think you know that story.
Whoa.
I don't know that story, but.
Well, I mean, I've heard this before from people never be funnier than the host and things like that,
Well,
and he was getting an awful lot of attention, taking attention away from the bride, who was the main person in the show.
Wow.
Well, we don't have to take any charity dinners for Phil because
No, of course not.
he created Everybody Loves Raymond, which ran for 10 years, and he's created Somebody Feed Phil, which has been running for 8 years or so on the Food Network or on Netflix or wherever it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Phil's doing okay for himself, and also Everybody Loves Raymond was syndicated. He sold Everybody Loves Raymond into Russia. So there's a Russian version of Everybody Loves Raymond.
Everybody loves Raymond and eats Bush.
Yep.
What's the take on Phil from you?
What's the take on Phil?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Brilliant? Okay.
He's brilliant, and he is every man. I had a meeting with Phil.
Oh.
He's just a wonderful guy.
Regular guy.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was his parents that it was based on,
Yeah.
That's the two older characters was his parents, so it was very familiar to him. It was easy.
Yeah, he wrote about what he knew, his family.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
First
Exactly
rule of
right.
writing, right? What you know.
First rule of writing.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you know.
That's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I also wanted to mention, I don't know how much time we have left.
We got plenty of time.
A few minutes. But I'm my most recent thing is that
The Martian stuff.
there's a publication called Weekly World News
Right.
that was originally owned by the Washington and by the National Enquirer, and it was sold to this investor group in 2007. But it was on the supermarket newsstands since 1979, so it's a 40-year-old brand.
Wow.
And once this investor group in New York got it, they had somebody trying to make, doing television and film stuff, and they actually engaged Steven Spielberg, and they were close to getting something happen, but it kept getting delayed until finally it just went away, and it just lost its momentum. And my friend Greg, who wrote and edited probably like 5,000 stories, went back to them and said, I want to take another shot at to do television and film. And so since 2019, he took over as CEO, and now I'm working with him as a development director and executive producer. And Greg
Why don't you
Warner Brothers.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your subject matter, Joe?
The subject matter
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
The Weekly World News.
It's not a legitimate publication. It's certainly a legitimate publication, but what kind of stories do you focus on?
Well, these are kind of freaky stories. This is fake news before fake news became normal. It's their major character is Bat Boy, and he was a boy that was born, was raised by bats in a cave, and he's their major character. And actually, Frank, there's going to be a TV series that Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, the guy who did Riverdale and Big Love and Pretty Little Liars.
It's a Warner Brothers. It's a Warner Brothers series.
It is, and with Netflix. And so we've got a signed contract, and so I'll be a producer on that, an executive producer on that. So I'm excited about that. And another producer named Greg Berlanti, he's another Warner Brothers guy. You know these guys, Frank.
I know them. I know.
I'm sure you do.
Did you see the reaction on his face?
I'm writing Bat Boy down. I'm writing Berlanti.
Hilarious.
You see the reaction?
And then you got Greg Berlanti, who was in the original company of Tony and Tina in Chicago.
Was he?
Yeah. Well, I really haven't had any contact with him since then, but I understand he's a big producer now.
Frank looks like he owes him money. I don't know. He gave a look like
a big producer is
Yes, that's great.
underselling him.
Yeah, right.
Underselling.
Guy's a
That's
monster.
right.
Huh?
Guy's a monster.
No shit.
A monster. Yep.
Speaking of monsters in producing, I have a question about the economy of your process. So, for your shows, can you give us a breakdown of how it works economically from start, and then how you get paid?
Well,
Is that a question for me or Frank?
no,
Frank,
it's for you.
It's for you, sir.
Oh, for me. Well, in my case, I mean, I was connected to the IP,
Okay.
and we had put in an announcement, a deadline that we were going to start a film and television division, and our first project was a movie that we did called the Zombie Wedding. It's actually out there right now, and we've got Sherry O'Terry in it, and we've got some people from other people from Saturday Night Live, and Vinny Story from The Sopranos, and we've got a bunch of names in it. But it's a silly little campy movie. The first movie between a zombie and a human. That's now documented. But as far as the
the wedding,
let's talk about theater world.
Yeah, theater world.
Theater world.
Yeah, because it's sort of like an unknown. Billy Van Zandt was on the show, and he gave us a bit of a breakdown. So I'm curious what your take is on it as well.
I worked with Billy on one of his shows. The Menopause Men he did. Menopause Men.
Menopause, yeah.
Yeah, the Menopause Boys, actually. So I was producer on that with another friend of mine. So I know Billy. I know Billy also.
Oh, okay.
Right out of the gate, we had trouble with the title, and the people who did the Menopause, the musical, threatened lawsuits with us and stuff, and we were like, we're not even out of the gate yet, and we're already spending money on lawyers, and so we had to change the name, and we didn't really get any traction on it. But I like Billy's show. It's a fun show, and it deserves to be out there. I know he wants to keep performing it.
But tell us how a typical business deal is made on producing a Broadway play.
Well, basically, you get Broadway plays. A lot of money involved, but like when I did mine, basically you identify a property that you like. You find out who the authors are. Then you go to them and try to do what's called an author's agreement, which is basically a granting of rights. And you try to get worldwide rights, and you agree on a royalty, on a weekly basis.
And that might be what percent? 5%, 3%, 15%?
That'd be like for an author in theater, it's about 6%, 7% of the gross. If you have a composer, you have the director, all of these add up. You try to keep it within 12 to 13%. Sometimes it goes up more, and certainly on Broadway shows, because there's music people, composers and lyricists, and the director, and there's a lot of royalty participants. Even some of the designers get percentages of the gross up front.
Wow.
So then you work out the budget. You see how much. Costs have increased so much. We did Dr. Zhivago probably 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and like 17 million, but that would be 25 or 30 million now. It's just.
Oh, so that was your production cost.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like $1 million a week to run these shows.
Really?
So it's
wow.
It's become untouchable for normal people.
Right.
Who's got the money to pay $4.50 a ticket? And then park your car and have go to a restaurant. You're talking about a $1,500 night. So so people who were going 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 times a year to the theater are now going once or twice.
Right.
Which I think is sad. The state of the theater is very difficult.
And you recoup your money via ticket sales only, or how does that work?
Yeah, oftentimes that they will get a percentage of the merchandising.
Okay.
And the rights, the initial rights, may or may not include the film rights. They usually don't. At least in my case, I only had the stage rights. So the authors own the underlying property, and I'm just basically licensing them the exclusive rights to present it live on stage.
Got it. And then how do you determine? So do you ever start with the audience in mind with an idea that you're trying to source, or do you just go with the story that you think works?
you know, of course, producers are always thinking about the audience. I mean, you just want to know that there's a vast enough appeal, and then how you're going to go about marketing them. I mean, you almost think about it in reverse, you know, a lot of times. But yeah, there are great stories that need to be told, but they're not always, you don't feel that the audience is necessarily big enough to support that.
Sure.
You know, so that certainly comes into the decision-making process.
Okay, and then as far as the marketing piece, like how involved are you in the marketing of a show?
Well, I mean, we do have regular marketing meetings. You know, like in the Broadway shows, you know, you got the ad agency. They come in and they do a song and dance. Okay. They show you all different things for logos. They propose how they're going to spend your ad budget. You know,
but you make the final decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, let me ask you. I know you had cancer. Why don't you tell us a little about your foundation and how that foundation works?
Yeah, we went to. You know, I lived in California twice. And that second time, my wife had gotten a writing scholarship at Cal Arts. And we had moved back to Marina Del Rey, brought the kids back, put them in school there in Los Angeles. And I was just having like a sore throat, thinking that something's happening. I kept going to the doctor until I finally got tested. And they said that there was something in there that I needed to get a biopsy. And so because I have a lot of nurses and a few doctors in my family in New York City, they recommended that I come back to New York to get treated. And so I did. I got treated at Sloan. And I had a tumor that was outside of my lung. So they didn't know if it was lymphoma. They didn't know if it was, you know, throat cancer or what. But when they did the biopsy, it turned out to be lung cancer. And I wasn't a smoker. So it was and it was outside of my lung. But they explained to me that that was the origin of the cells. And so that it was considered an oncologist, you know, how to see an oncologist, you know, an oncologist that deals with the lung, you know. But I moved back to New York. I stayed with Robbie Nedboy. It was Marty's niece, who Frank, you know well. And I stayed with her through my process where I did, you know, 5 times a week for 7 weeks of radiation, and then 3 different 6 days at a time, and then 6 days off, and 6 days of chemo, and I came through it great. I mean,
thank God.
I had a lot of trouble swallowing and stuff, but you know, I found that if I drank martinis, it helped.
It always does. I want to just real quick.
Listen to the throats. I get the food down.
Yeah, I bet you lost a lot of weight during that period.
Actually, one of the few people that put on weight.
Really?
Yeah.
The olives. You should have skipped the olives. The olives. I tell you, the freaking olives got a lot of calories in them. Yeah. I'm going to touch real quick back on the World News Authority, because what I love of this is it was the authority on aliens, zombies, mutants, conspiracy theories, and my favorite, the last line, wayward politicians. That's just a great tag. And why don't you tell us real quick about Zombies versus the Mafia? Isn't that a project of yours?
Oh, it's gotta be fantastic. Well, we knew a lot of guys from the Sopranos. You know what I mean? A lot of guys who were in it. Many of them had done Tony and Tina. So these people are friends and acquaintances. And so we thought it'd be so funny, just this premise of, because we know we can raise money for zombie movies. We've got a distributor that's basically going to give us money for our next film, and he wanted us to do a zombie film. So when we came up with this idea, they were very, very excited. And so basically the premise will be that, you know, that the humans have done everything they can to get rid of these zombies, and they can't do it. So now they got to bring in the mob to see if they can exterminate them.
The National Guard has failed. The Air Force has failed.
Exactly,
Bring in the mob.
right.
Fantastic.
That's right.
Great
love
premise.
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot it in Atlantic City, which is gonna be fun.
And they got all the guys from The Sopranos. How could you
That's
do better
right,
than
that's
that?
right.
That's terrific. Great premise.
Yeah.
Will
Yeah.
Joey Cola be involved? Because Joey Cola is he hosts a bunch of those Sharippa and
Oh, Sharippa, yeah. I know Sharippa way back before Sopranos when he was booking shows at the Riviera, Marty Nebboy's favorite hotel.
yep, and
Yeah.
Imperioli. He hosts. They do a bunch of shows, sit down shows with audience, and Joey Cola,
Yeah.
who we've had on the show, hosts those. So
Right.
I didn't know whether you knew Joey or not.
I don't know him, but we're like one step removed. My partner Jeff Mazzola has used a lot of guys in movies he's done, so he knows a lot of these guys too. And Vinny Pastore goes out with a band.
Sure.
Seems to me, Joe, you know every fucking body. I think you're in business, brother. I think you know everybody. Or you kicked
Well, I was around. I was
time or
around a
another.
lot.
Kicked around. Knock around guy, as we call it.
Any last
That's
questions?
right.
Yeah, I got an expertise question for the two producers online here. So you guys pitch shows, and seems like Joe, you're pitching some pretty original stuff. How do you prevent your IP, your ideas from being lifted?
Pilfered.
Exactly.
It's a concern. It's a concern. We're going to be announcing this in the next 2 weeks, so it's not like it's not going to happen. But yeah, it's a concern that people steal the ideas. So
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't be talking about it, but
Well, yeah, no, I
I'm out of the bag already.
yeah, I don't think anybody. This is not going out for probably a couple of weeks anyway.
At least 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it's not coming out for a couple of weeks, so you're safe there. But I was just curious because I pitched some shows that have been, so I'm wondering like, is there a mechanism for?
Yeah, the mechanism is you have to have an agent submit it.
Oh, okay.
If you have an agent submit it and somebody tries to steal it, they're going to be sued by the agent.
Got it.
And at our level, at the studio level, we don't want any productions. I mean, my contract prohibits me from even receiving anything if it's not. If Derek, if you come to me and with a script, I can't even read it because I'm prohibited by law.
Got it.
My contract.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Good to know.
I'll read it and tell you about it.
You'll read it and tell the
I don't
world.
give a fuck about the law.
You'll read it and tell the world about it.
Just a few million people.
Any closing thoughts for Joe?
No, man, what a pleasure, man, to
Yeah.
meet you. What a pleasure. I really had a ball on this one. This was really a lot of fun for me talking to you, man.
Well, same here. And Frank, I'm very, very impressed with what you've done and how you've taken care of our friend Marty. And it's an impressive resume of accomplishments.
Well, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat?
I got your book too.
all right.
Look at who
I
else.
got the book, and it's a
Billy O'Connor.
it's a collector's edition with both of your signatures in it.
Oh,
Wow.
wonderful.
When did I get this? I'm not sure. I remember.
Well, probably 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great
Great.
stuff, Joe. I'm glad to hear that, brother.
Good book too. Good book. People go run out and get
Oh,
it.
I love it. I love it. I was reading it through it back again last night. Knowing that I was going to talk to you guys.
It's pretty funny.
it's a
Pretty
pleasure.
funny. Well, thanks, my friend.
Thank
good,
you, Joey.
Good talking to you.
Really a pleasure,
Thank
brother.
you, Frank.
I really had a ball.
And Billy, what a pleasure. I'm sure our paths will cross again.
I hope so, brother. That'd be my good fortune. I'll tell you that.
Better say Derek, good pleasure also, because he'll take it personal if you don't.
Yeah,
mention it.
No. it's
Derek, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Okay,
Take care,
Caroline.
Joe. Bye bye.
So long, Joe. I'm not going to let you off the hook, by
Why?
the way, until you talk about this executive producer thing, this producing thing you did with the Jack Kent Cook. Is that his daughter? Is that his daughter? Goldie Hawnskin is in it? What's the
Jack
story?
Kent Cook. No, it's series is called Running Point. It'll be on Netflix on February 27th.
am I right in surmising it's based on Jack Kent Cooke's daughter?
You're wrong in surmising it's
Okay.
based on Jack Kent Cooke. It's based on Jerry Buss's daughter.
Oh, Jerry Buss. I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh.
Jerry
And
Buss's
she is
daughter.
Jeannie Buss is one of the executive producers.
Oh.
Oh, so
And it stars Goldie Hawn's daughter.
Goldie Hawn's kid.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who is?
I forget her name. I know she was in the groupie thing. I don't know.
Yes.
What's her name?
I can't think of it.
Goldie Hawn's
He's
kid.
good. He's good.
He was
What's
trying to
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kate Hudson.
Kate Hudson. Thank you.
That's the same as
Oh, wait,
Hi.
the Hudson brothers,
Yes.
right? Don't
Oh,
they-
the Hudson brothers.
They were buddies.
Okay, I'll tell you a quick story that I told in the book. The Hudson brothers, when Jay Thomas and I were were recently out here in 1977, 78, we played touch football on every Sunday at Paul Revere Park, Paul Revere Junior High School. I think Paul Revere Junior High School may have burned down because it was across the street from Will Rogers State Park, and I know Will Rogers State Park burnt down. But anyway,
Jesus.
we would play football with the Hudson brothers and a few other guys. Phil Caccialetti, who was dating Pam Dauber at the time. Phil was playing, and he had played quarterback. Phil Caccialetti had played quarterback at Appalachian State. Anyway, we would just show up every Sunday, except one time, the Hudson brothers were always on the same team, and they were always arguing. And they were three of the biggest putzes that had ever lived. But they had money. They had their Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle show or whatever on Saturday morning television, and they were a pretty big thing in the 70s. And then one Sunday, they all showed up in Rams uniforms, head to toe, uniforms, socks, jerseys, and we were fucking there in cut off T-shirts and sweatpants and stuff. And these guys were. And one Sunday or a couple of times, Goldie would show up with her kids, and Kate was one of the kids, and Oliver was one of the kids. She would sit there and they would watch football, and they would regale. Well, I mean, Kate and Oliver were like 1-3 or 1-4, so they were oblivious. But Goldie would just sort of like hide her head at their annex. They would argue on every play. Call a penalty on every play. They were like guys who called fouls in basketball every play.
Right.
So
Sucks.
And they ended up hooking up.
They ended up breaking up, and Goldie was with her living husband for many years. Kurt Russell.
Yeah, Kurt Russell. But so this is going to be released when? When is it?
February 27th.
Right.
All 10 episodes will drop. It's about a basketball team, about a woman who takes over a basketball team from her 3 dysfunctional brothers.
So it's about the Lakers.
It's about the Lakers, but we couldn't make a deal but the NBA and Netflix couldn't make a deal. So
wow,
we made a deal with the NBA, but the NBA with Netflix couldn't make a deal to allow us to use the Lakers name. So we came up with a fictional name, and we based everything around is based on Jeannie's life, but
minus the Laker name.
So the name of the team is the LA Waves.
What?
LA Waves.
Wow. What? Oh well, LA Waves is good enough.
Yeah.
Do you know the deal that couldn't be made?
It had something to do with clip rights.
Oh.
It had something to do with rights of using the show in promotion. It was a clip rights deal. I believe Netflix wanted to use the clips in the NBA clips in their promotion, but NBA wouldn't allow it.
Well, keep an eye out for it. This looks like it'd be a good story. It looks like it's pretty funny.
It's a pretty good show.
Yeah,
pretty funny show. February 27th on Netflix, and this will be out right around that time.
All right.
I got some questions about this off air.
Well, let's hang up. Let's say goodnight, and let's answer those questions.
Thanks for looking in. Keep an eye out for that show. It's going to be a good one. I know it'll be.
It's called Running Point.
Running Point.
Thank you.
next week.